Hello and welcome to the Wake Up Call podcast. Today we're speaking with Mr. Robert Wenzel about the first general election debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Mr. Wenzel is editor and publisher of economicpolicyjournal.com and of targetliberty.com. He is the host of The Robert Wenzel Show and the author of The Fed Flunks, My Speech at the New York Federal Reserve Bank. You can follow his work at economicpolicyjournal.com and at targetliberty.com. You can find him on Twitter at Wenzel Economics. For more information, please see the show notes page for this episode at wakeupcallpodcast.com/Trump-Clinton-debate. Robert, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good to be with you.
All right, well, great to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. So we'll get into some of the specific comments and specific moments and some of the fallacies that were put forth in a little bit. But let's just start out with sort of the overall impressions about the debate. So what did you think about how the candidates did, what the format was like, what the crowd was like, the setting, who helped themselves, who hurt themselves? What did you think about the whole spectacle of this thing?
As I wrote, I found it very boring to begin with. I mean, they're basically both Trump and Clinton are very careful not to go away from scripted comments. They don't want to find themselves saying something that will be bandied about in the papers the next day as an outrageous comment or some kind of failure to understand something. So they pretty much stayed to the script. However, the big difference is Donald Trump's script was pretty much all about attacking Hillary on things he originally studied for, while Hillary not only punched at Donald, but also had counterpunches to what he had to say, and that's because she prepared more for the debate. That's clear compared to what Trump did. I think Trump actually has a stronger personality, and if he had prepared it all, understood what might have been coming from Hillary, he could have had responses for that and really dominated. But because he did not, at best, he sort of just neutralized Hillary, and it was a wash. But you see some polls saying that he won and others saying that Hillary won, and I think it could really go either way. But I really think in the next debate, you're going to find that Trump is going to be much stronger because he did not have mock debates the way Hillary did. So everything Trump raised, Hillary came back at him with a counterpunch. And because Trump didn't go through these mock debates, he didn't have any of that preparation. So my argument has been that this first debate was actually Trump's mock debate, where for the first time he learned what the punches would be thrown at him, and now he'll actually pay attention to his advisors, and he understands that he needs to study up and have responses to all this stuff. You have to understand he's pretty much I consider him a street hustler out of Queens, probably one of the greatest street hustlers ever. And those guys, they don't take time out of their hustling day to study up on things. They're out there with strong personalities, quick minds, and intimidating people, and that's been sort of the cornerstone of his success. Never before has he used bluster, where you have the entire national media, thousands upon thousands of blogs, commenting on what he said, doing fact checks on what he said. I mean, if he's in a room with three or four guys, I mean, he's just throwing bluster out there, and he's very, very skilled at it, and he's been successful. So he's in a different game now. He's a sharp guy, but I don't think he's ever had to really study and focus details before. And when he builds his buildings, of course, he just hires the right architects and building engineers and that sort of thing. And he never had to get into the specifics. But it's a different game when you're debating. in a presidential campaign, you can't send someone up there who has all the knowledge to sort of debate for you. You've got to do that yourself, and he's sort of learning that. I mean, his there's a limit to his hustling skills, street hustling skills, and what they can do, and how he has to adapt. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the second debate. But I think he'll be ready for Hillary next time around.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens next time. But on the punching and counterpunching note, in the primary campaign, he was largely successful as a counterpuncher. He had very aggressive and effective attacks on Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, just about every candidate for that matter. He had fairly effective attacks, and most of the time, if not all the time, these were in response to being attacked first. So was it just the one-on-one format that he wasn't ready for that? Because it seems like his counterpunching ability is something that got him to this point. So for that to have been a weakness on Monday night was a surprise.
Yeah, I think the primaries was a little bit different because really up until sort of last debate, I mean, there were a lot of people on stage, so there wasn't the same back and forth between two individuals. So he would often just wave it off, or he called somebody called Rubio little Marco and so on, and lying Cruz and all that kind of stuff, and there wasn't the back and forth where all that could be challenged. So that can work in a primary. And I think what he expected is it to be somewhat the same, but the problem is Hillary will have the facts. She will be able to throw things out at him that really wasn't the case in the primaries, because Trump would just dismiss it, and then you'd go to another candidate. So it wasn't you were just left with that. In this, first of all, he had to be careful that he wasn't dismissive of Hillary. That's why I think the best thing, his best stroke, was in the beginning, asking her if it was okay to call her Secretary Clinton, because what you had there was a case where he was showing some respect, quote unquote, for her service and the great things she did as far as being Secretary of State. So he had to be careful not to sort of do the thing he did in the primaries where he just sort of waved stuff off. So it's a different kind of thing, and he just wasn't ready for it. He wasn't. What he needed to have was some kind of immediate response back to whatever Hillary did, and he was afraid to sort of go out of whatever he was prepared for, and he wasn't prepared for counterpunching, because that has got to be drilled into both candidates. Do not say anything that you haven't been prepped to say, because that's where you can get into trouble. When Gerald Ford said, some of the Eastern European countries weren't controlled by the Soviet Union, that's the stuff that is going to get you in trouble. So you just want to stay to your script, and Trump had a script for punching, but he didn't have that script for counterpunching. And the reason he didn't have that script for counterpunching is because he would have really had to go through a mock debate and understand whatever Hillary was going to throw at him, and he didn't do that. He had the stuff. He said more than once, Hillary, you've been in government for 30 years and you haven't done anything that you're proposing to do as president. Why should you believe you? I mean, that was a message that he was trying to get out there, and he got that out. But the counterpunching is where he failed, because he couldn't be condescending the way he was in the primaries and just wave stuff off. And but that will change. I fully expect it to change in the second debate, because now he knows what the game is all about, and he'll come back and he'll have the answer. I mean, there were some obvious answers to all this stuff that he didn't use, and I think he will in the the second debate. You have to remember the first debate between Romney and Obama. Obama had a very, very poor debate, and then he sort of went back and readjusted and had a much better performance in the next couple of debates. And also Reagan had a very poor debate also, and they attributed that to him putting too much information in his head. And I think that's what Trump was afraid of, is that he would have too much information in his head. But counterpunching isn't about putting information in your head. Counterpunching is about, look, if she says this, this is how you smash her. It's not about trying to keep a bunch of statistics in your head or trying to memorize some kind of speech on some kind of policy issue. It's, look, if Hillary says this about your university, if Hillary says this about your treatment of Miss America, this is how you hit her back. And there are very, very obvious ways to do that. And Trump, for whatever reason, I mean, he didn't think it was necessary. He didn't think it was important. I think it's more because he's just a street hustler and he knows how to handle people. He's excellent at it. And this is just was a different kind of thing because he was scripted for a certain part, and he knew it would be dangerous to sort of go off on something that wasn't in the script, and therefore he wasn't ready for all of these jabs from Hillary. But Hillary has an extremely limited range, and I think she showed her whole game, her whole ability, where she can punch, how she can punch, and Trump will be ready for that because now he's experienced it. He knows what it is. And when his advisors tell him, look, when she says this is what you hit her with, he's going to do that because he really has a much stronger, much more powerful personality than Hillary, and that sort of has come across throughout the primaries. I mean, he's really has a presence and a commanding presence, and you could see that with Lester Holt to some degree. Lester Holt was clearly in Hillary's pocket, but Trump was still able to control him to a certain degree, and also in the style and manner. When he was punching, he could really push Hillary and intimidate her a little bit. But again, Hillary was ready for that stuff, and he did not have any of the counter punches. He will have the counter punches in round two.
What did you think about the format and the crowd, and also the debate moderator, Mr. Holt?
Yeah, I think Lester Holt was clearly, I mean, he's a mainstream guy. They sort of think a certain way, even if they're not consciously in favor of Hillary, unconsciously they are, and they're going to sort of ask the questions that favor Hillary. They're going to be much tougher on Trump and less tough on Hillary, and that was clearly the case. There was a lot of things they could have brought up about Hillary that were not brought up, but we got into the birther question with Trump and a lot of sort of side issues that have nothing to do with how the country's going to be run down the road. And that's just sort of the nature of the game. But Trump can handle that. I don't think that's as much of a problem as the fact that he just was not prepared for Hillary's punches. That was his biggest problem. And as far as the audience, it was pretty much behaved. I mean, they cheered a couple of times for Hillary and stuff like that. But I don't think that stuff matters. I think the people that are Trump supporters and favoring Trump dismiss all that. They know media is against Trump. They know the kinds of crowds that will go in that kind of that will be put in that kind of an audience for the debate is going to be a biased crowd, and so I don't think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and not only did Lester Holt bring up the birther issue, but also the issue of Trump's tax returns came up, whereas the issue of Hillary's emails or her Goldman Sachs speeches, the Clinton Foundation, some of the scandals and issues surrounding her campaign were not brought up, or if they were brought up, they were brought up by her opponent, by Donald Trump, and not by the moderator. So it was definitely influential in the way the debate played out. That doesn't mean Trump handled himself very well in addressing those issues. but Lester Holt did bring up scandals and controversy surrounding Trump much more so than he did scandals and controversy surrounding Hillary.
Yeah, no question. But again, Trump has the presidency. I mean, he can handle that if he was prepared for that. He could handle all that stuff. He could challenge. I mean, he challenged Hillary a little bit on the. I mean, I think he was prepared for the tax question, and then he pledged to release his taxes if Hillary would release the deleted emails, which, you know, I'm not sure how you release emails if they truly are deleted, but you know, he seemed to was prepared for that, but clearly could have gone much deeper into the Clinton Foundation. He could have. I mean, what I think Trump should have done is the minute Hillary went into any of this personal stuff, like I have here in the audience, a Miss America that Trump abused and blah blah blah. Trump should have said, "Look, Hillary, you know, this is we're up here debating serious problems about the future. You have opposition research out there. It's a lot of nonsense, and if you want to go into that, there are books written about the things in your background. Do you want to go into your background? Do you want to do that right now? I'll tell you what's in these books, and you can answer them right now." And that's all he would have had to say, and that would have put knocked Hillary on her back heels. And what's she going to say? She's not going to answer the question because she's not going to say she wants to go. She's going to immediately stop all that personal attack because Trump can just go back in that direction and say, "Look, Hillary, there are serious problems in this country. We need to deal with them. You know, people are unhappy. People are not making the kind of money they expect to make. We've got wars. We've got terrorists. Blah 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 and blah blah blah. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want to talk about nonsense, personal stuff that's been put out there by all kinds of people? You're throwing this opposition research. I'll be more than happy to bring up the opposition research in the books that have been written about you." And that's it. She's not going to go near that stuff anymore. She'd be knocked out.
Right, and of course there are numerous women who claim that her husband raped them or had sex with them while married to Hillary, and then the claims also come that Hillary silenced Bill's alleged rape victim. So
right.
he could have gone into that if she had.
He wouldn't have even have to go into the specifics. All he would have had to do was threaten Hillary and say, "Look, Hillary, you want to start bringing up this opposition research nonsense that you have about my history. I think it's a terrible place to go based upon what's wrong with this country. But if you want to go there, we can start discussing this stuff, and there's been books written about you and what you have done. Do you want to go there, and do you want to discuss this stuff that's been written about you?" She's going to go and there's no way she wants that stuff brought out that way. And then Trump can justify it by saying, "Well, you know, Hillary's the one that wanted to discuss all this personal stuff. I had nothing to do with it. I want to talk about the country." And she wouldn't. She just wouldn't.
So what did you make of Hillary's health? Because that has been an issue lately, and a lot of people probably tuned in thinking that she would have a coughing fit or that she would have some sort of incident related to her health during the debate. She seemed to do okay in that regard. Her stamina came up at the end, the issue of her stamina and what that's like. But what did you make of her health? And what did you make of her, and this might seem like an odd thing to touch on, but her smile seemed very odd throughout the debate. What did you make of that?
Yeah, well, I think the smile overall, I think it's very, very robotic. I don't think she's a genuine person when she smiles most of the time, so it's sort of a practice smile. As far as her health, I mean, she looked healthy and during the debate, but you know, we still have two more to go through, and I don't know how can she actually control if she does have a coughing fit or if she has one of these body freezes or whatever it is that has happened to her. I don't think they happen all the time. I don't know if there's some kind of medication you can take that can sort of boost you short term, so it's less likely to occur. But she looked okay. Whether she can continue that for two more debates is going to be the interesting question. And by the way, I fully expect Julian Assange to release something within the next week before the next debate. I expect his next batch of emails to be leaked. This would be perfect timing for them to come out, and I think you're going to see that. So she's going to have to deal with that on top of her health issues.
So I would agree that Donald didn't do a very good job whenever he was attacking Hillary, but I'm not even sure, even if he were to memorize the counter punches really well, I just don't know if in this format he can be extremely successful. Hillary's been in so many of these debates, and yes, she may seem extremely disingenuous and sometimes a little bit creepy, but I think really the only way Trump can win is if he's able to be consistent and have his thoughts go in a consistent manner whenever he's counterattacking. Even the times that he did during the first debate, he would start attacking Hillary, and it would make sense, and there were some good points, and then he would jump to another topic, then he'd go back to the first topic, and it was just hard to follow. And even if everything that he said had some interesting points to them, or even if they were good zingers, they just weren't presented very well. And I'm not sure if he's that capable of memorizing the zingers in a script format and presenting. I think he's better off the cuff, and I just don't know if he's going to be able to do it in that second debate. I don't know.
Well, I don't think he should memorize responses. I think it's more of a case he sort of has to have a general idea of how to respond to things, which with Hillary's punches, and he didn't have that. He really wanted to stay on script, and he does have a tendency to go off on tangents that you would think would make no sense for him to go off on and spend time on. But that's part of his personality, and that's not going to change. But I think basically what's going to happen is they're not going to give him exact words. It's not going to be, when Hillary says something about somebody in the audience, they're not going to say to him, say these exact words or anything. But they're going to have to say to him, say, look, you got to respond to that. And the way you're going to have to respond to that is you got to tell her that you're going to bring up stuff about her. And that's it, and let him take it and form it in his own words. And he'll have those thoughts in mind. Remember, he's up there on a stage having to think of this stuff right away, but more significant is he did not want to veer too far from what he was prepared for, because that is really, really the most dangerous thing you can do, is to sort of veer off direction in this kind of debate and say something that the media is going to blow up on. So they're both limited as far as that, but because he did not have any practice with the punches that Hillary would throw, he did not know how to respond to them, so he generally did not. But in the next debate, he will. Not that he's going to have to remember rote things and facts and numbers and all that. I mean, he's not going to do that. There's no way that's going to happen, and that's not the kind of preparation he needs. He just needs preparation to say, look, she starts bringing this stuff up about your personal stuff, this is how you handle the personal stuff. She starts bringing up your tax situation, this is how you you handle that. I mean, he handled the tax thing a little bit. I mean, they expected. But any of this other stuff, they'll just go over it. And she's limited in her range. She doesn't really have much that she can throw at him that she didn't show in debate number one. So they'll have all that down.
So partway during the debate, Donald Trump started talking about stop and frisk, and then Lester Holt commented about how it was ruled unconstitutional in New York. What were your thoughts on that exchange between Donald Trump and Mr. Holt?
Well, Trump had a good comeback. He said, look, what happened was that a judge at some level ruled against stop and frisk, but it could have been appealed, and that Mayor de Blasio chose not to appeal it. So he countered. I mean, that was a case where he actually understood some of the facts, and I think he did okay there.
All right, and what did you make of Donald's comments about the Fed? Hillary, of course, didn't say anything about the Federal Reserve and didn't comment, unless I missed it, didn't comment in response to what Trump had to say about the Federal Reserve. And of course, the Fed is not brought up often enough in these sorts of debates and as a political issue. But what do you make of what Donald Trump had to say about the Federal Reserve and the way he handled that subject?
Well, basically, I'm happy to see he brings it up to create more suspicion about the Federal Reserve, but I don't really think he has the problem with the Federal Reserve that he indicated in the comments he made. I mean, he's in the past said he likes low interest rates, and that the only time the Federal Reserve needs to raise interest rates is when there's accelerating inflation, and we don't have that now. So, based upon Trump's own guidelines, there's no reason for the Fed to raise rates. That he sort of charged that it was political, and it probably is political to some degree. But I don't think Trump has a real serious problem with it. He just raised that because it was an easy thing to throw at Hillary and sort of tie her in with the political elite. That's what went on there. But I don't think Trump understands anything about the Federal Reserve or how they create booms and busts or why we don't need one or any of that stuff. That would be a stretch.
And what about Hillary's views on the so-called Great Recession? She seemed to suggest that tax cuts, particularly tax cuts on the so-called wealthy, and the quote-unquote wealthy, were largely responsible for that. What did you make of her remarks there?
Yeah, she that from her side, she was just throwing nonsense out there. I don't think she really believes that. Of course, to the degree anyone understands the Federal Reserve and the business cycle, which I write about in my book, The Fed Flunks, it's what the Federal Reserve did that created the boom and the housing bubble that eventually turned into the bust. But Hillary probably doesn't understand that, but she also knows the tax cuts didn't do it. I mean, she's what's really going on is Trump. A lot of Trump's advisors, Larry Kudlow, for example, are supply-siders who are very pro-tax cuts, and there's something to that. Lower taxes are always a great idea. But what she was really trying to get at is really something technical, where she's trying to show that supply-side economics does not work, and that's why she called it Trump trickle-down economics. And but she has to keep it simple for the audience, but still show that it's kind of from her perspective a bad thing. And that's what was going on there. As far as she's concerned, she's a serious interventionist. She has no problem with high taxes, and but I don't think she's really schooled in economics to understand specifically what causes a boom or bust. And I don't think she really actually truly believes that the Reagan tax cuts, to the degree there were actually any tax cuts, that's questionable, caused a recession. That doesn't make any sense. She's just getting some advice from her Keynesians that and put into simple terms that she could present to a large audience that at the same time opposes Trump's perspective.
Yeah, we tend to see that a lot from both sides in these presidential debates, where it's just, if there's anything that happened, well, let me just throw as many things as I can that I either like or don't like into this comment that I'm going to make, and then tack on the end of it, oh, well, all these things that I think are bad caused this bad event, or all these things that I think are good are caused to this good event, even if there's no connection between the two of them.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And the only reason they can get away with that is you have the masses who really have no gut understanding on any of this stuff. They have no understanding of the difference between a centrally planned economy and a free market economy. If they had that kind of understanding, you would never be able to do that kind of stuff. When people have something sort of as their basic values, which to the degree is free press now, although that's sort of fading away with the political correctness and things like that. But if neither one of those candidates, either Trump or Clinton, would come out against free press in a general sense, Trump has sort of flirted with that idea with regard to press and slander. But neither one of them is going to come out against free press, and neither one of them is going to come out in favor of slavery. And that's basically just because the populace would react completely against that, and they would have no chance. So what really needs to occur is that the population in general sort of has to have some basic understanding about the importance of freedom versus central planning, the way they have a gut reaction against slavery. And until that happens, you're going to get politicians that just throw nonsense out.
And some of the nonsense that Hillary threw out, and you blogged about this, and I know you found this particularly shocking and astounding. And I'm going to read this quote from her and then ask you to comment. I also want to see more companies do profit sharing. If you help create the profits, you should be able to share in them, not just the executives at the top. So what do you make of that pretty remarkable
statement? I mean, I don't really know if she really believes that. Okay, as I wrote in my post, it might be a case where she's just trying to solidify her support with the Bernie Sanders people, where you have a lot of socialist and really hardcore leftist thinking. To the degree she does, it's nonsense. It's Marxian in the sense that it clearly is a statement that shows she doesn't understand labor, she doesn't understand capital, she doesn't understand entrepreneurship, she doesn't understand risk, she doesn't understand central planning versus free markets. I mean, it's a terrible statement, and I only hope if she's president that she really doesn't have some kind of plan to institute some kind of major profit-sharing thing, because that would be extremely destructive. What kind of capitalist is going to put money up where if he makes money, he has to share it, and if he loses money, he has to internalize all the losses, and that would be a terrible situation. It would shrink the number of capitalists dramatically. And at the same time, when you consider the labor market, I mean, most people, not everybody, but most people prefer a steady salary where they know how much is coming in every month, and they can budget and work off of that, versus having it bounce up and down based on profit. And what would really happen is if you sort of had something where there's profit sharing, what's going to occur is that firms would offer less in wages because they're going to say to people, hey, well, you know, you're not only getting your wage, but you're going to get this profit, which could be this, but it would just make it a much more volatile and crazy situation for laborers. I mean, it's really an insane proposal, and I hope she doesn't mean it.
So one thing that was also brought up a ton in the debate was free trade and jobs moving overseas and NAFTA and the TPP. And we kind of heard the same line, I feel like, from both of them, just presented in different ways. Hillary talked a lot about how trade deals need to be fair, whatever that means. And then Trump was saying, there's taxes for goods coming into the country, but there's not taxes on the goods going out, or the other way around. And what did you make of both of those exchanges, and who do you think won that exchange over free trade and NAFTA?
Well, they're both terrible on trade, although I suspect that Hillary is probably more free trade oriented than Trump, and she sort of moved to this anti-NAFTA and anti-TPP position because of Trump and the support he was getting because of this stuff. Trump is a total mercantilist in the sense that he sees money coming into the country as a positive, which means a trade surplus versus a trade deficit. But all a trade deficit really means is people are exchanging paper for goods. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no problem. And Trump sees it as a major problem. It means he doesn't understand comparative advantage, which is simply a situation where in the world there's always potential work for people based upon the fact that we're not in paradise, and lots of things need to be done. And even if a surgeon is the best typist, the best cleaner, and everything else, he really makes sense for him to focus all day long on surgery. And although he is the absolute best at typing and the absolute best at cleaning an office or a medical facility, he shouldn't be doing that. He should be doing operations, which then opens up jobs for less skilled people who maybe can be proficient at typing, or who can be proficient at cleaning an office. So when we see jobs going overseas, all that means is, hey, we're not willing to work at those rates, those wages, because we have other alternatives. Otherwise, we would be bidding for those jobs, the people, the laborers. So he's just got complete confusion about that. There's always jobs for everybody. Supply and demand, market's clear. It's total confusion. He made a further statement, which means with regard to the VAT, and he didn't seem to understand that, and that's a sales tax, which doesn't really have that much to do with international trade. It may in certain ways, but not the way he implied it did. And Hillary says she's against TPP and stuff like that, which are crony deals. But I have made the point in the past: if you look at a situation, a free market economist must always point out that TPP is a crony deal. All you need is for an agreement for trade. You can do it by unilaterally and just say, we're for open trade. Sell us your goods. We're going to try and sell to you wherever you allow us. That's all you need in a trade statement. When you have thousands and thousands of pages, you know it's some kind of a crony deal. Now, that said, a crony deal is better than no trade at all. I use the example, suppose there's some kind of drug in some country that could save lives here, okay? It might be that there's 6 companies in different countries around the world that produce this drug. So it would be great if we had a free market and all 6 countries were selling the drug here, because then there would be competition and the price would go lower. However, if there's a crony trade deal, international global trade deal, where the cronies get together and say, okay, only company A is going to be allowed to sell this drug in the United States, well, that's not the same thing as free trade, because it's blocking out other companies that would be willing to. However, one company selling into the United States a drug that can help people, maybe save lives, is much better than no companies. So TPP is bad. There's a lot of really bad stuff in it. NAFTA is bad. There's a lot of really bad stuff in it. But it's possible to make the argument that these crony deals, although extremely crony and terrible, are still better than no trade at all.
Right, and even though maybe Hillary is slightly more in the direction of free trade than Trump, Trump is far more consistent with what he says about trade deals, what he says about NAFTA, and what he says about the TPP. And Hillary, the appearance there is that she's flip-flopped, particularly on TPP. So I feel like Trump was more effective in that portion of the debate, just because he seemed to be more genuine in what he was arguing, whether it was right or wrong. But I want to, before we wrap up, look at 2 more things that came up. So there was a long section on race in the United States, and of course there were racism and sexism charges bandied about throughout. What did you make of the way those topics were covered in this debate? Because they really were discussed at pretty great length, considering there were only 90 minutes and there were all kinds of topics that never came up.
Yeah, it's just a hot topic these days. There's a lot of nonsense with regard to it, and I really don't pay too much attention to it, focus on it too much, because it's talking about nonsense. for me, the racist problem is not a big problem. If there are people that do not want to deal with blacks or Asians, or blacks who don't want to deal with whites, I don't care. In most cases, when we in the world as human beings, we have very, very close relationships where we exchange and talk, and we're exchanging on a personal level, where we know a lot about the person, and when we like the person, or we enjoy the exchanges. But then there are many, many other people where we only tangentially deal with them. I go to a convenience store around the corner here, and there's a guy who's Middle Eastern. Okay, I don't know if he's a terrorist. I don't know if he's pro-American. I don't really care. He's got the juice, the bread I want. I buy the juice. I buy the bread. I give him the money. He smiles at me. I smile at him. We do a deal. The idea that we have to know all about people and whether they're racist and who's hiring whomever. I mean, it is a total distortion to reality. In most cases, we're not really dealing with people on those kind of levels, and in most cases, it would be totally insane for any person of any race to sort of exclude any exchanges with people that are from a different race. How could you almost survive in the current civilization by only buying products, if you're a white person, only buying products made by a white person, only products that are sold by white people, where services are only by white people? I mean, go ahead, try and do that. You're not going to do it. The David Duke and all those guys, I guarantee you're using products made from all over the world, that are probably delivered to them by people of different races and everything else. Are they going to stop all? Are they going to start their own equivalent of Federal Express and only have white people? It's nutty stuff. I mean, if they want to do that, let them. Okay, if I happen to think anybody who sort of has a thing against another race for no justifiable reason or anything like that is nuts. On the other hand, there are some situations where it pays attention. If you're going through an area you don't know, and there could be people of other races that may not like you in that area because you stand out, you would stay away because of the fact that you may be of a white race or whatever. But the whole idea that this is some big major problem and everything else is just ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. If there are racists out there, so what? There are not that many people that are, and if they are, the civilization could not function the way it does now if they actually had the kind of society that they expected, where it would only be white people. Maybe they have some kind of subcategories where people could do certain kinds of jobs. I don't know, but it's just goofy, and it really does not interest me very much. And there are probably people, like I said, the Middle Eastern guy, I have no idea what his things are. My laundry lady's Chinese, I have no idea what her views are on white people or anything else. I deal with all kind. I get packages from Federal Express guys, and they come to the front to the office here. I don't even know if they're black people, Asian people. I have no idea who delivers them, and I don't care. Most of the time, most of the exchanges we're dealing with are not exchanges where we have to look deep into a person's background with regard to his race, his views, or anything else. And as far as people on an individual basis, if for some reason somebody doesn't want to deal with somebody that is a black person or Asian person or white person, they're going to miss out if that person has other things to offer that might be of interest to them. I mean, I personally do not judge people based strictly on their race and whether I want to have them a part of my sort of inner circle. They have to bring things with regard to discussions or something that's interesting to me. That's more important than that stuff. But if somebody wants to do it on that, I don't care, and I think it's just a situation that's blown completely out of proportion.
All right, and one other exchange that I want to touch on with you before we wrap up, and that was their back and forth on nuclear weapons. Trump seemed to make a comment opposing a first strike, but then he also seemed to contradict it at other times. And Hillary, of course, is trying to portray Trump as having a bad temperament and as being, therefore, more likely to use nuclear weapons. Trump, to some degree, is trying to portray her as trigger-happy. What did you make of that whole back and forth on nuclear weapons?
Yeah, I think they're both anybody that seeks the office and has to go through what those two are going through, obviously are very power hungry, and Trump has flip-flop on that. I think some of the libertarians that are for Trump are hanging their hat on the fact that Trump will not get us into nuclear war, but I think that's completely mistaken. It's clear that Trump can change his views in a second and says different things at different times, so really don't know. He may be able to get along better with Russia, but that's to me an open question. It's a case where there are plenty of other places where he could certainly set off, go into a nuclear war, including North Korea, maybe China. Trump may be prejudiced against Asians. I have no idea, but it doesn't seem like he has many in his organization at a high level that I can see. I don't think he sort of has the same warmth toward Chinese leaders as he does towards Putin, so that could be concerning. There was an indication that he may have wanted to, was shocked that the U.S. did not do more as far as Iran, and you could get into nuclear question there. So I don't think he's sound on the nuclear question at all. It's totally unclear. Hillary's crony. I mean, she gets paid off by Russia. I mean, there's a whole school out there that says that Hillary's more dangerous because she's going to get us into war with Russia. But if you look at the facts, she's been paid off by Russians, and she's allowed something like 20% of the uranium supply in the United States to be owned, controlled, and shipped to Russia. She has been challenged by neocons for not being aggressive enough with Russia. So I don't necessarily see her as wanting to go mano a mano. I guess you can say that with Hillary, mano a mano, against Putin. I don't see that. I mean, they're both sort of unpredictable, and they're power hungry, and who knows what would cross their minds when they were in power. But I don't think there's anything distinctive that would say one is much better than the other. Say, for example, if you got Ron Paul in, he wouldn't go in that direction at all. But with these two, who knows? They're very dangerous people.
Yeah, they are. And Hillary has very horrible rhetoric about Russia, but Trump is very anti-Chinese, or as far as his rhetoric towards China, and of course what he says about Iran. They're both very dangerous.
Right.
I think it's a mistake, especially for libertarians, to support either of them, or to support Gary Johnson or Jill Stein for that matter.
Right.
But they're both very, very dangerous, and this is a very fascinating and interesting election to follow, largely because it's so unusual in the scope of what we're used to seeing in these elections. But it's not so much that there's one side necessarily that's worth rooting for.
Right, exactly. They're both very, very dangerous people. Neither one of them understand the basics of economics. Neither one of them are going to bring us any closer to free markets and liberty. I mean, I think they're both will add to the security state, the surveillance state, and just be terrible. The only thing I fear with Trump, I just think he's more creative. I think he thinks out of the box, and you don't know what he'll come up with. Hillary is terrible on everything, but as P.J. O'Rourke said, at least you know the bounds of where she's going to be terrible. Where she's not a creative thinker. She's a plotter. She's not going to everywhere she's going to go. It's going to be terrible, but you sort of know the bounds. With Trump, he's creative, so you don't know what he would come up with under what kind of situations. And I think he's got a very authoritarian streak, which he's sort of hiding a little bit now. Someone I'm sure has told him, saying, keep your mouth shut on all this stuff, and get in and become president, and then you can do what you want. But I don't think he's going to take protests or anything like that quietly. And you could have military people, Department of Homeland Security, who knows, all over the place under Trump, all kinds of surveillance. It could be so the threat with Trump is not only with regard to his foreign policy, which, by the way, I think he'd put troops in the Middle East within 30 days of his Trump administration, but I also think domestically it could be a very, very serious crackdown. And that's another place where the libertarians make a mistake. Assuming, for example, that they are correct and Trump will not get us into as many foreign wars as Hillary, the reason that Murray Rothbard preferred presidents that did not get us into wars overseas is because he felt there was a blowback and it caused more government control domestically. But I think that's going to come with Trump or not, regardless of what he does overseas. You look at the people around him, Giuliani, Christie. These are all authoritarian types, and Trump certainly had. You can debate how valuable the Constitution is, but Trump certainly has no respect for the Constitution at all, and you could see incredible amounts of authoritarian. The stop and frisk is just the tip of the iceberg with what he could come out with, and you're going to have a hardcore of supporters, maybe 25%, maybe 30%, who are going to sort of be, Trump's supporters and informers in a very enthusiastic way. Hillary's not going to have that. Hillary is going to have some of the crazy politically correct crowd, but nobody likes them anyway. So there's no way she's going to be able to amass the support for extreme government authoritarianism that I think Trump could. So I think they're both terrible, but I really fear Trump much more than, not much more, but I fear him more than Hillary. Hillary will be absolutely terrible.
Well, they're both definitely very dangerous, and they're both surrounded by very dangerous people.
Right.
But we'll leave it there. And on that note, what are the best ways to follow your work? Is there anything in particular that you've written related to this election or this debate that you think people should check out? And if you want to make a prediction, do you have a prediction on how this is all going to turn out?
My only prediction at this point is you see people who sort of say that Hillary is ahead. And I just want to caution that you really don't know what's going. First of all, we don't have the Assange emails that are going to drop, so we don't know what emails or documents he has and how that might change the election. We've got two more debates. That's two more 90-minute sections where Hillary can't faint. She can't go in a coughing spell. Maybe she can do it. I mean, she looked okay this time. I don't know if they give her something for that or whatever. You don't know how those things are going to turn out. I think Trump will be much more prepared. There's probably October surprises from both sides that will come out soon within the next couple of weeks. So I think it's too early, but I don't think you can write off Donald Trump at this point. So we'll have to see as far as that's concerned. And was there another question too? I forget. Is that?
Yeah. Is there anything that you've written related to this debate or to this election that you recommend people take a look at?
Basically, what I've been doing is commenting on my two websites, economicpolicyjournal.com and targetliberty.com. On economicpolicyjournal.com, I tend to focus on the economic comments they make and discuss how they go against basic economics and fundamental understanding. I mean, it's amazing the stuff that's said that has not been checked by mainstream media. And at Target Liberty, I tend to look more at what's going on from a political perspective and also things both candidates reference as far as positions that are in favor of or against liberty. And for the most part, they're against liberty across the board. So if you want to track the demise of the current civilization, those are the two places to go: the economic collapse You can track that at economicpolicyjournal.com, and the overall collapse of civilization at targetliberty.com. Maybe there's hope. I don't know. You can never predict the world exactly. That's one of the fundamental tenets of Austrian school economics, which I'm a follower of. And so we don't really know how this is going to play out, how different things will react. But it's pretty dark from here. But at least, and I tend to be entertaining on my site, so at least we'll go down with some gallows humor.
Yeah, well, the show notes page for this episode, I want to encourage everybody to check that out, is wakeupcallpodcast.com/Trump-Clinton-debate. And, of course, we'll link to economicpolicyjournal.com and targetliberty.com and the @Wenzel Economics Twitter handle. So that's wakeupcallpodcast.com/Trump-Clinton-debate for the show notes page for this episode. And I want to encourage everybody to sign up for our email list and to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Stitcher or your preferred podcatcher so that you can stay up to date on what's going on and catch all the episodes and not miss any. And, Robert, I want to thank you so much for joining us today to dissect this first debate. I saw that somewhere in the neighborhood of 84 million people watched it, and it was the highest rated debate in terms of number of viewers in the history of presidential debates. So it was a highly anticipated show, and evidently they got pretty high ratings. And so for better or for worse, I felt like it was worth dissecting, and well, the dissection didn't necessarily produce anything pretty for either Trump or Hillary, but there it is. Sometimes the truth hurts, I guess.
Right.
But we'll see how this plays out, and we'll see what happens in the next two debates and in the VP debate as well.
Okay, very good. Good talking to both you, Adam, and Daniel, and I appreciate it. And good luck. Let's see what happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see, and at least we know that this will be slightly more entertaining. So whether that's good or bad or what, it'll be a little different probably than the more recent election cycles that we've seen.
Right, and the administration after that. I mean, it's going to be highly entertaining for those of us who are quick on our feet and know how to navigate this stuff. For most people, it's not going to be so pretty. I think it'll be oppressive. But if you're quick on your feet, and if you read economicpolicyjournal.com and Target Liberty, you'll get some pretty good tips too on how to handle all this stuff.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, take care, guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wake Up Call podcast.
If you would like to listen to more episodes, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes, or subscribe on Stitcher, and check out our website at wakeupcallpodcast.com.
There you will find show notes pages and comment sections dedicated to the show. You can also email us at contact@wakeupcallpodcast.com if you're interested in being interviewed for the show or have any other suggestions.
Thank you.